All right, and we start on the Daily Nation newspapers this morning. See what we can find here. It says there, compromise move by warring groups give parliamentary talks a chance in the polls roll. Of course, it's titled Closing Ranks. Hope at last. Rival camps allied to President William Ruto and Azimio chief Raila Odinga yesterday struck a compromise on the bipartisan talks after Kenya Kwanza withdrew Jubilee's Adan Kinan, I beg your pardon, from the MP's committee, and the opposition side called off today's planned protest. The two sides also closed ranks on a proposal to amend the constitution and create the office of the leader of opposition. I've never heard of this. I have absolutely never heard of this, where there is an office of the leader of the opposition. And this is very interesting, and I'd like to hear what Kenyans really think. Very likely we're going to be having Darren Butler join us tomorrow, and we should, talk about this. The office of the leader of the opposition, and that is very likely where, or the office that Raila Odinga would be heading if this is approved. All right. State of the economy, new jobs dip, agriculture hits, and of course there's figures there showing performance of key economic sectors in 2022. Why plans to block Uhuru's pension is a tall order. And also on the Daily Nation this morning, Ruto unveils new funding model for universities. There'll be no fee increase, President assures parents and students. And these are the big ones on the Daily Nation. We, of course, are still in Kenya this morning. Going to be looking at what the Star newspaper has for us this morning. And now on the Star, it says here, Azimio dares Ruto on Uhuru, Raila perks. Odinga allies trash motion as illegal. Odinga allies, I beg your pardon, trash motion as illegal. Tell president's lieutenants to bring it on. Also calls for road safety as 6 BE secondary students are buried. It's a sad story. Also on the Star this morning, economic survey. High cost of living lowered value of 1,000 shillings to 550 shillings in 2022, says data. And also accountability, World Press Freedom Day. Media stakeholders mark annual Media Liberties Day. And I have not been informed about Uhuru rejection as Jubilee leader, says registrar. And I think there's an article there. It says Wycliffe Muga of journalists and politicians. That's the title of the article. You can find out more on it this morning. And these are the stories in Kenya this morning.
All right, let's move on now. Let's go to Liberia and see what we do have there in Liberia. The front page there, well, front page, Africa ascertains that the Liberia Electricity Corporation, LEC, has failed to pay Cote d'Ivoire Energy and has been using more energy than contracted since Transco CLSCG connection in December. It says, in all, a reason behind the power outages. So the power outages as a result of not being able to pay what is being owed to Cote d'Ivoire and overusing what is actually meant to be used. So that's the reason why they are experiencing power outages in Liberia. Let's take a look at another story there, the big one. This time it says land grab forced eviction. Land grab forced eviction. It goes on to say 22 indigenous communities write World Bank president seeking reforms, compensation, and also they are seeking reparations over clients' alleged actions. All right, right into the World Bank. I mean, sometimes I think to myself, when will Africa start to solve its own problems? Why blow the whistle and shout and call your neighbors? They're not even your neighbors. They're like
thousands of miles
away. You say, please come and help us. So come and help us. Please help us. Whereas you do have your neighbors who are neighboring countries. I mean, take a look at this story. You're owing your neighbor. You pay before you use power. And then the land grab issue, well, you might want to read about it to get more insight into the story. Time will fill us if we want to dwell more on it. One last story from my end. Take a look at the front page. It says, wife seeks justice. Wife seeks justice for ailing husband who is an employee of a company in Liberia. You see the picture there as well. But that's what we're taking on the front page. From front page, let's move on to Punch in Nigeria. Punch, very punchy, a headline this morning. Outrage as Senate approves Buhari's 22.7 trillion naira extra budgetary spending. Don't forget, though, that this money was equally added initially. It's coming from the Ways and Means, and we had talked about it. Anyway, fresh borrowing from CBN illegal. Suspicious, say NECA, LCCI, and economists. 22.7 trillion naira extra budgetary spending to raise public debts to 69 trillion naira. I thought our debt profile was nearing 77 trillion naira, but of course, yes, if you add every single thing, we're looking at thereabouts. But then again, the borrowings continue, even though the president has less than 20 to 22, 23 days left in office. Questions are being asked. Why still borrow? What's the problem? Nigeria launches Agenda 2050. Federal government projects $33,000 per capita GDP. Possibility or not? Well, many are indifferent about this story. APC NWC fails to zone National Assembly leadership seat. Police arrest Oshun twins for cultism. Twins were arrested for cultism in Oshun. Page 5 has that story. Senate proposes live jail for unlawful explosives makers. So if you're caught making explosives because you are indeed a danger to the society and you are indeed a supporter of terrorism and insurgency, you risk a lifetime in jail. Let's take a few more. Sudan, 376 stranded Nigerians airlifted from Egypt. They have arrived, by the way, and they're being told they will receive 100,000 naira each. We talked about that at the start of the show. Federal government disconnects discos from national grid over debt. Page 19 has that story. Still talking about power, debt, and the likes. And finally, strike. Resident doctors say federal government's threat is annoying. Do you think it is annoying, actually?
The Guardian newspapers this morning says Nigeria to spend the next 40 years repaying controversial 23.72 trillion naira CBN overdrafts. Very, very interesting and very, very, I might want to call it sexy news. The next 40 years, yes, for Nigeria. Project refund, I owe you nothing, Tinubu tells Wike. And also National Assembly leadership, Tinubu defers zoning decision after May 29th. Remember, he's still president-elect. And of course, you know, we Nigerians, of course, is still in anticipation of the tribunal and seeing where it leads and see how that turns out. Corrupt officials sabotaging passport issuance, Eric Bishola alleges. And also Nasima, CPPE lament worsening state of economy. We could also find here, Senate cannot stop demolition at Lagos airport, says the federal government. Police officers, families to vacate 25 barracks for renovation. Final story on The Guardian this morning. Despite probes, official corruption, undermining building control enforcements. These are the big stories this morning. But of course, the major one in Nigeria on The Guardian is that Nigeria is to spend the next 40 years repaying controversial 23.72 trillion naira CBN overdrafts. Very, 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 very interesting. All right, moving away from The Guardian this morning. This is what we have next. We now move to the Daily Trust newspapers, still in Nigeria. It says here, speakership. Opposition intensifies plots to upstage APC. Says we are more than prepared. It's a fruitless move, and that's from the chief whip. And also, we're working on consensus, says Adamu. Sudan crisis, Nigerian evacuees airlifted from Egypt without luggage. Oh. And also, Press Freedom Day, IPI sets agenda for Tinubu's government. Lagos, Ogun, Kano top as internet subscribers hit 154 million people. Ways and Means, Senate okays Buhari's 22.7 trillion naira loan request. It's very, very interesting. And also BON nominates Trust TV for Broadcasting Awards. Also this morning, Buhari launches Nigeria Agenda 2050, targets over 150 million jobs. And these are the ones that we can share on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning. We move on to other newspapers. in Uganda now on the Daily Monitor newspapers. It says here, driver speaks on Angola shooting. When hell broke loose, Mr. Sam Odongo, who had chauffeured Colonel Charles Angola for 15 years, has shed more light on what could have caused the shooting on Tuesday, saying Wilson Sabiti staged the attack when he was dropped as chief bodyguard. Also, flood kills 16, cuts off villages in Western, and that's in Uganda. Nature's wrath, and that's how it's captioned this morning. Sad picture you can see there of a man with his, pieces of little valuables, still, of course, paddling his way through the flood. Uganda now slips further in press freedom ranking. We spoke about that yesterday, and of course, from the Amnesty International report, the eastern and I think southern part of the continent, were troubled regions with regards press freedom. Parliament drops proposed 15% tax on unit trusts, and also DM today, stay safe while attending races. That's on page 18. Government responds to outbreak of mumps in schools. And finally, I'm not sure what that story is about. Those are the ones that we can take on the Daily Monitor. We can squeeze in the Sowetan this morning in South Africa and see what we can find. Of course, updates on the Thabo Bester story. It's the biggest story in South Africa at the moment. Really, really dramatic. You can see a picture there of Dr. Nadipa Magudumana and her co-accused appear, of course, in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court yesterday in relation to the daring escape from prison of her lover, Thabo Bester, last year. More on that on page 3. And also, she tried to kill me too. A woman arrested for faking her husband's death for issuance of, faking her husband's death for insurance. Also alleged to be behind the Panga attack on her stepfather. Also on the Sowetan this morning, couple to appear in court for the murder of a man believed to be Lerato Malangu's ex-lover. The Sowetan South African stories are always very, very fascinating, I'll tell you. We can also find here Reserve Bank flashes new money. That's on page 7. Driver's license machine breaks again on page 3. And also squatter camp bows out after 27 years. That's on page 3. That's in entertainment, I believe. These are the stories that we can find this morning on the Sowetan. And, of course, all the stories that we can share at this time on, of course, the newspapers. We have more newspapers for you coming your way. Second half, actually tomorrow. Not in the second half or third half. The third half of Breakfast Central. Maybe, extra time.
Maybe you had
when we do extra
added time for breakfast extra time.
All right, these are the stories that we can share. We have, of course, our top stories coming up next. We have very interesting conversations here in Nigeria and a few other places for you right next. Stay with us.